my name is Jeanette, and I want to thank you for joining me on the channel Jane Reads. So today we're talking about one particular book setting and books set in that place. Can you guess what setting I'm talking about? Okay, so for my Christian Fiction Reading Challenge, the prompt for the month of July is set in your home country. Well, my home country is Canada. So I'm going to talk about books that are set in Canada. Now I'm going to undo this, and yes, I have a Canada shirt underneath as well. This is actually the only clothing I have that says Canada on. This t-shirt and this jacket. Okay, so I'm going to talk about books set in Canada today. Now I am not talking about just Christian fiction because there's another author that I've read quite a few of that have books set in Canada. So I'm going to include that just so that we talk about books set in Canada in general. So there are certain authors that have written a number of books set in Canada. And the first one that a lot of people think about, and it's mainly a lot of her books are set in PEI. Do you know what author I'm talking about? And a series in particular? Yes, that is Anne of Green Gables by McGomery. So this is an 8-book series, but I've only pulled out book number 1 to show. But yes, they are all set in PEI. Also set in PEI, she has the Emily series. So book 1 is Emily of New Moon. This is the only one of this series I have read. I have read Anne of Green Gables up to number 5 so far. This year. I have read the whole series 2013, so 12 years ago. I did read the whole series, and now I'm working my way through the series with Chantel's Europe mod. So right now I'm at, next book will be book number 6. But these both are set in PI. Then she also has The Blue Castle. Yes, I felt like I had said that name wrong. She has The Blue Castle, which is set in Ontario, which is where I live, where I was born. Not where I've lived my whole life, but I was born here and now I live here. And so, okay. So, Montgomery. Now, another author that has quite a few books also set in PEI. I can't grab them. Okay, so I only own 4 of the ones, but she has 2 full series that are set in PEI with 2 other books that are kind of companions to one of those series. So her original series is The Prince Edward Island Dreams, and this is by Liz Johnson. So book 1 is The Red Door Inn, book 2 is Where Two Hearts Meet, and book 3 is On Love's Gentle Shore. And this series is all set in the Red Door Inn. And so in book 1, we meet Marie and we find out how she gets connected to the inn, and we kind of follow a romance story for her and the startup of the inn. Then in book 2, we meet Kaden, who is the cook? Yeah, I guess the cook. I think that she's or the baker, the chef. That's the word I was looking for, I couldn't think of. Who is the chef at the Red Door Inn. And then we meet Natalie, who is staying at the Red Door Inn. And so these are 3 books that I recommend. All of her books are contemporary romance for the ones set in PEI. Her other series is the Prince Edward Island Shores series, and book 1 is Beyond the Tides, book 2 is The Last Way Home, and book 3 is Summer in the Spotlight. And so this series features 3 brothers. One is an ex-hockey player and has returned home. The other 2 have stayed on the island, but they kind of all have a fractured a little bit relationship with each other. And we follow that family relationship, but we also follow the guys finding love. They are contemporary romances. Then the companion series, or the companion books, The first one is Meddling with Mistletoe, which I have not read yet. I hope to read it this coming Christmas season. And it just says the recipe for romance is simple: sweets, treats, and mistletoe meets. And so that is one of them. And the other one is Sometimes You Stay, which follows, what is her name? Krisha, who is a digital content creator. She ends up on the island. She stays for longer than planned because her stuff gets ruined and she has to wait for it to be replaced. She meets someone and we follow her story. And so from my understanding, these are connected. Well, not from my understanding, it says on the cover of this, the Red Door Inn Christmas Romance. A Red Door Inn Christmas Romance. And Sometimes You Stay is just a Red Door Inn something. I don't know how it's worded. I can't think of it offhand. But the Red Door Inn makes appearances in both of these books from my understanding. As I said, I haven't read this one, so I don't know for sure. But yeah, Liz Johnson, PEI settings. Okay, another author is Carolyn Miller, who also writes contemporary romance. The series that kind of sticks out to me, well, the only series I've read by her, is the original 6 hockey series, where we are following a hockey player who is based on one of the original 6 teams. So there's 6 books in this series. Each book follows one of those characters, and it is a romance story. Or they are romance stories. Book 1 is The Breakup Project, and this one is set in Ontario and Boston. So the male and female character are both from Toronto, and the male character is playing for the Boston team. And so then book number 2 is Love on Ice. This one features a hockey player who plays for Detroit, Michigan. And then the female is Australian, but she is preparing to compete for the Vancouver Olympics. So part of this takes place in BC as well as Michigan. And she is friends with the female character from book 1, so there's also scenes based in Ontario. Then book 4, which is Hearts and Goals. This one is set in Quebec. The hockey player plays for the Montreal Canadiens, and the female works at a gardens there, and that's where they meet. Then book 6 is called Muskoka Blue, and this one is set in Muskoka, Ontario, where the main character is on summer break, so it's between seasons, and he is staying at his cottage in Muskoka, Ontario. And the female is also staying in a cottage in that area. And so those are the 4 that kind of have Canadian settings show up in them. Then she has another series which follows after the original 6 hockey series called The Northwest Ice. Now, I've not read any of these books, so I do not know where any of them are set, but it's all Northwest hockey teams. And the book number 1 is Fire and Ice. And I know that book number 1 is set in Alberta because of the way the write-up says. And it says, Hannah's heart might have once been touched by a rancher's son, but her real passion has always been sports. Years later, when her sports career is cut short by injury, she jumps at the chance to be one of Calgary's first female sports reporters. The trouble is, some of the old dinosaurs she works with think she's only there to look good, add ratings, and stir controversy among the loyal hockey fans. She longs to prove herself, so when an opportunity comes along to interview newly traded defenseman Franklin James, she meets him. Or more accurately, she re-meets him, with disastrous effects. I am interested in this one, especially because, again, we're following hockey. Okay, so the next author is Darlene L Turner. She is Canadian. She lives in Ontario. And she has written 9 books that I have listed here. She has written a couple that were not set in Canada. But out of those 9 books, she has 5 different provinces or settings. Well, provinces, 1 territory. So if you know Canada, we have 10 provinces and 13 territories. So she's got 4 provinces out of the 10 and 1 of the territories where she has a book set, which I think is really cool that they're not all set in the same place. I mean, she's from Ontario. They could all be set in Ontario, but they're not. Okay, and she writes romantic suspense. Most of her books have been published with the love-inspired suspense, and her newest release, which comes out June the 24th, is a love-inspired trade. So it is a full length rather than these shorter love-inspired suspense books. And a little bit grittier, but really good. I will talk about that at the end because that's the most recent book I read. Okay, so starting with the first book I read by her, which I'm pretty sure was her debut book, is Border Breach. I gave this one 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. I am pretty sure it is set in Ontario, but when I first read it, I was not recording the settings on my books, so I'm not 100% sure on that, but it is Canadian for sure. Okay, it says, forming a joint task force, Canada Border Officer Kaylin Poirier and Police Constable Hudson Steeves have one objective: take down a drug smuggling ring trying to sell a new lethal product. But when the smugglers come after Kaylin and Hudson, this mission becomes more than just a job. Can they live long enough to solve the case? Okay, then book 2 is Buried Grave Secrets. I give this one 4 stars. It is set in Newfoundland. And when bones are found at an unmarked gravesite, and then shots are fired, forensic anthropologist Jordan Miller knows someone wants old secrets to remain buried. She'll do anything to uncover the truth about these suspicious deaths, including accepting the protection of her ex-boyfriend, Constable Colt Peters, and his canine. But with targets on their backs, can Jordan stay alive long enough to bring a serial killer to justice? Okay, so then book 3 I'm going to talk about is Safe House Exposed. And I should mention, I am not talking about these in order. I'm talking about them in the order I read them, not in published order. Okay, so I gave this one 4 stars. It is set in Ontario, and we are following Canadian Border Officer Emma James has only one concern after putting a crime boss behind keeping her daughter safe. But witness protection has a leak, and Emma's enemies know exactly where to find her. Now on the run, with no safe haven, trusting her estranged former brother-in-law, Police Constable Mason James, to shield them is her only hope. Okay, book number 4, Mountain Abduction Rescue, also 4 stars. It is set in Alberta. A serial arsonist is out for revenge in the Canadian Rocky Mountains and kidnaps park warden Hazel Hoyt's son and his camping troupe. Now Hazel must team up with the man who broke her heart, firefighter Mitchell Booth, to find the missing boys as wildfires blaze around them. But someone has no intention of letting the pair get off the mountain alive. Okay, next book, Fatal Forensic Investigation. I gave this one 5 stars. It is set in British Columbia. And it says, while interviewing the Coastline Strangler's only surviving victim, forensic artist Scarlett Wells is attacked and left with amnesia. Now she's his next mark and has no choice but to work with the constable Jace Allen to unlock the criminal's true identity trapped in her mind. Will they be able to recover the hidden memory and hunt down the killer before he strikes again? Okay, then we've got Canine Ranch Protection. I give this one 4 stars, and it's also set in British Columbia. A killer on the loose, a canine keeping watch. Police Constable Izzy Tremblay knows her father's death was no accident, so when she finally discovers a lead and is immediately attacked, her suspicions are confirmed. The ambush leaves her in the hospital with 3 hours of critical memory missing, which she knows holds the key to finding her father's murderer. For protection, she takes refuge with her ex-partner, Austin Murray, on his canine ranch while she races to uncover the truth. But with danger still lurking, can they stay alive long enough to take down a killer? So the next one, which is her most recent release, which comes out June the 24th, is Echoes of Darkness. I gave this one 4 stars. It is set in Ontario. And it says, the sleepy community of Kenora Peak Falls in Northern Ontario seems like somewhere Constable Oakland Brock can finally outrun her violent past. That is, until she's assigned to investigate a series of suspicious deaths. She can't reveal that she knows how serial killers think because she grew up with one. Yet the eerie similarities between these murders and those committed by her father, known as the Suicide Slayer, hint at a copycat is in their midst. But why here and why now? Okay, and then the 2 books that I have not read yet are Explosive Christmas Showdown, which is set in Ontario. And it says, a bomber brings terror to Christmas as the presents go tick, tick, boom. Okay, then the other one is Yukon Wilderness Evidence, which obviously I also haven't read and don't own a copy of. And it is set in Yukon as per the title. Okay, now another Canadian-born author from Ontario, actually local to me, is L.D. Stoth. This is, I would say, a romantic suspense. And this is a series, it's a 3-book series called the Campground Mystery. So each one is just a campground mystery. You could read them as standalones. However, characters from book 1 make appearances in book 2. And characters you meet in book 2 make an appearance in book 3. Okay, so book 1 is Stormy Lake. Book 2 is Lake of the Cross. And book 3 is Starry Lake. So book 1 is a camping trip with creepy spiders and menacing thunderstorms. Seriously? Little did Maya realize those fears would be the least of her worries. In my world, that is like, I don't want to go because of that. And then to come across a killer? Yeah. This is really good, but really could scare you off of camping. And I'm not a camper to begin with. So yeah, I really enjoyed these books. I really enjoyed the banter between the characters, and the setting made me feel like I was right there. And these are set in Ontario. They're written in they take place during the summer. They're on two girlfriends go out on a camping trip in a national park, provincial park. Provincial park is what they're called here. And so, yeah, I highly recommend this series. Book 2 was definitely my favorite. I just liked the characters the most. But these characters make appearances in this book. Another Canadian author who is from Ontario is Susan Ann Mason. And she writes historical romance. And she has a series called Canadian Crossings. Book 1 is The Best of Intentions. It is set in Ontario. I gave it 4 stars. This is a series I want to continue. I have not read book 2 or 3 yet. And it says, in the aftermath of tragedy, Grace hopes to reclaim her nephew from the relatives who rejected her sister because of her class. Under an alias, she becomes her nephew's nanny to observe the family up close. Unexpectedly, she begins to fall for the boy's guardian, who is promised to another. Can Grace protect her nephew and her heart? And then book 2 is The Highest of Hopes, and book 3 is The Brightest of Dreams. and I have not read books 2 and 3, so I'm not sure who they follow, but I do know they are all set in Toronto. Okay, now a new release that just came out in the beginning of June, also by a Canadian author from Ontario. This book is also set in Toronto. It is a historical romance, and that is The Lawyer and the Laundress by Christine Hill Shuntz. And I gave this one 4 stars. It is a marriage convenience story, but it is a later, a delayed marriage of convenience where the marriage doesn't happen till closer to the end of the book. And there it is a single father, and so the lawyer is a single father. Then the laundress is a single woman trying to kind of hide her past a little bit, and she gets into some sticky situations, and I loved the way the romance developed slowly between them. And the daughter of the lawyer, I want to say 8-9 years old, is so cute and really speaks her mind and just really entertaining. I highly recommend this book. Not only do you get fun banter between characters, lovely interaction, faith discussions, but you also get to learn moments of history, especially Canadian history. And I just really enjoyed this one. Okay, then another one talking about history and learning about moments in time. One of my favorite books is No Ocean Too Wide by Carrie Taransky. This is a historical fiction set in London, England, and Ontario. It goes Toronto, Kingston, and kind of that area. It is early 1900s. I think it's 1909, I want to say. Let's see how close I am. Oh, I was exactly right on. And we are following some siblings that get separated, and the younger siblings get sent over to Canada, and then the older sibling comes over to try to find them because they shouldn't have been sent over to Canada. So book 1 is No Ocean Too Wide, and book 2 is No Journey Too Far. So this one we are following the older sister and kind of one of the siblings a little bit. We do follow the other siblings a bit, but it really kind of wraps the story with one of them. And then this one picks up and continues with the other siblings. And I loved this book for sure. I learned so much about a time in history that I did not really know about. And it just says, between the years of 1869 and 1939, more than 100,000 impoverished British children were sent across the ocean to Canada with the promise of a better life. Those who took them to work as farm laborers or household servants were told the children were orphans. But was that the truth? Yeah, I absolutely loved this series, for sure. I highly recommend it. Okay, now, books that I have not read, but I know they are set in Canada. The first one is The Day the World Came to Town by Jim DeFeed. I don't know. This is a non-fiction, and it's 9/11 in Gander, Newfoundland. So this just kind of tells the Gander story about what happened during that time when 9/11 happened and the U.S. airspace was shut down and a lot of planes ended up landing in Gander, Newfoundland. There is a musical that is being made of this, Come From Away, and this is the true story behind the musical Come From Away. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to reading this one. So this is one. Then I already talked about that one. Okay, as I was doing some searching, I discovered an author who is also Canadian that has written quite a few books set in Canada. And I'm like, oh, I want to read those. So I have not read this author. I do know she writes Christian fiction, and she is from Manitoba, I want to say, if I remember correctly. And her name is Terry Todd. And the two books that I'm going to talk about, she has a bunch more, but the two books are the two that kind of intrigued me the most. And the first one is Even If We Cry. I should say she writes historical fiction. Okay, so Even If We Cry. Nina's one task is to keep her family together while World War threatens to rip them apart. Warned they mustn't cry, British teenager Nina Gabriel and her two young siblings board a ship bound for Canada as part of the World War II child evacuee program in 1940. Nina's mysterious brother and seasick sister test their limits on the long voyage, but her burden of responsibility still grows heavier in Canada. Determined to fulfill her promise to her parents, Nina battles to keep the siblings together through what they all hoped would be no more than one school term. Months turn into years. Okay, then the other book is Bleak Landing. And it says, in the dead-end Canadian town of Bleak Landing, 12-year-old Irish immigrant Bridget O'Sullivan lives in a ramshackle house and dreams of another life. Even as the Great Depression rages. Routinely beaten by her father and bullied by schoolmate Victor, the waifish yet fiery redhead vows to run away and never return. Just a few short years later, run she does, fleeing the unspeakable repercussions of her father's gambling. In Winnipeg, Bridget lands a job at a garment factory, the first step on her journey to shed her past and begin anew. When her father dies, Bridget returns home to claim her inheritance, but she has no identification to prove her state, and no one in town recognizes her except Victor, who has become a pastor and a candidate for town mayor. Though war has wounded him, his secret affection for Bridget remains, and now he's the only one who can help prove her identity. But can he also prove he's a changed man worthy of her forgiveness? As Victor preaches of faith and freedom, will his words spark Bridget's once hopeless heart and lead her to the life she's been seeking? It just sounds so good. Okay, another book series by an author that I have not read yet. I am in the midst of reading my first book by her. That book is not set in Canada. But this series is, and it is the Bride Ship series by Jodie Headland. This is historical romance set in British Columbia. There are 4 books in this series, and book 1 is A Reluctant Bride. And it says, after facing desperate heartache and loss, Mercy agrees to escape a bleak future in London and join a bride ship. Wealthy entitled Joseph leaves home and takes the sea as the ship's surgeon to escape the pain of losing his family. He has no intention of settling down, but when Mercy becomes his assistant, they must fight against a forbidden love. Okay, then book 2 is The Runaway Bride. Book 3 is A Bride of Convenience, and book 4 is Almost a Bride. And so yeah, these are all set in BC or they are heading to British Columbia. So just sounds really good. Okay, another book by an author I have not read yet is Between Two Shores by Jocelyn Green. It's also historical fiction. And it says, the daughter of a Mohawk mother and French father in 1759 Montreal, Catherine would rather remain neutral in a world tearing itself apart. Content to trade with both the French and the British, Catherine is pulled into the 7 Years' War against her wishes when her British ex-fiancé Samuel is taken prisoner by her father. Samuel claims he has information that could help end the war, and he asks Catherine to help him escape. Peace appeals to Catherine, even if helping the man who hurt her heart does not. Okay, then the last book is Ladies of the Lake by Kathy Golke. I don't know how to say her name. It is also historical fiction. And this one I'm questioning where exactly it is set. But when she is forced to leave her beloved Prince Edward Island to attend Lakeside Ladies Academy after the death of her parents, the last thing Adelaide expects is to find 3 kindred spirits. The Ladies of the Lake, as the 4 girls call themselves, quickly bond like sisters, vowing that wherever life takes them, they will always be there for each other. But that is before love and jealousy came between Adeline and Dorothy, the closest of friends. Before the dawn of World War I upends their world and casts baseless suspicion onto the German-American man they both love. Before a terrible explosion in Halifax Harbor rips the sisterhood apart. So those are just some books that I have read that are set in Canada and some books that I've added to my TBR that are set in Canada. I know I am probably missing a ton of books. For example, there is Jeanette Oak, who is a Canadian author who writes a lot of books set in Canada, but I have never read any of her books, and they're just not ones that have appealed to me, which is why I haven't read them. But I know a lot of people enjoy her books, so give her a try if you are intrigued by that. And I'm sure there are other books I have read that I just don't remember them being set in Canada. I've only been keeping track of book settings for the last 3 years, I want to say. So it's very possible I've read a lot more, but it just doesn't stick in my mind of where they were set. But let's talk about books set in Canada, either books you have read that you really enjoyed, or books that I have interested you in that you want to give a try to. Because in my world, there does not seem to be enough books set in Canada. Now, that could be just my impression, doesn't mean that's the reality of it, because I haven't read every book in the world. I don't know. I'm sure there's a ton of books I'm missing. So yes, so let's chat in the comments below about books set in Canada. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video today. I would love it if you would like and subscribe and stick around for future videos. Have a great day. Bye.